Alrighty, so one game down in terms of match week number 22, and now we are going to preview all 13 games that's going to be happening tomorrow. And with the way that once again we're going to have all these games that's going to be taking place between 7:30 p.m. Eastern all the way up to midnight 30 p.m. Eastern time. That means yeah, things are going to be a little bit tight, though it's kind of well balanced with the way that all the games on this board are going to be starting either at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Pacific. In fact, we have exactly four games starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Exactly four games that start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And then on the other board are the West Coast game. And in fact, we have a lot of West Coast game. I think this is probably a record amount that I've seen. The amount of West Coast game that we have with all of them kicking off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. And one of them I'm actually going to be going to because it is the end of June, and as you probably know, when we get to the end of June, I of course will make my annual trip down to Stanford to watch the annual Cali Clasico at Stanford, and we'll talk about that game in just a bit. But there's definitely some very interesting game in terms of this week, some desperation derby, some rivalry game besides the Cali Clasico, and some unexpectedly marquee kind of matchup that you wouldn't expect that it was a marquee matchup a couple weeks ago, and now it is. Well, we start off with the first one, which again you could say this is a desperation derby between two teams that have not had a good season. Well, actually, one team has not had a good season. That is Atlanta United, but things are starting to swing in their favor ever since Rob Valentino took charge of this team. I mean, they have not lost ever since he took charge of this team as an interim head coach with a 5-6-8 record. Whereas they face against the TFC side that again they got off to a great start this season, but it feels like reality is starting to hit hard on this TFC side, especially the last couple of games. They really look like a team from last season that finished at bottom. Or dead last and bottom of the Eastern Conference standings, but they do still have a 7-3-10 record. All-time meaning 6-6-4 in favor of Toronto. Last five head-to-head matchup, it was a 2-0 home win against Atlanta. Now that is a matchup that Atlanta fans will argue that yeah they probably could have got the result in that game if they had most of their stars back in that game because that was during the international break. But before that, it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, a 4-2 Atlanta win over TFC, and then a 2-1 Toronto win over Atlanta United. So yeah, let's see how this game of course, is going to be, and especially with the way that, again, Atlanta has definitely played a little bit better now under Rob Valentino, but still, doing the free game in charge of his team as an interim basis. He's only got one win so far and got those two draws. And while that's, again, better compared to when they've only won one out of the last 13 near the end of Gonzalo Pineda tenure, they definitely want to get some more wins to get them itself higher in the standings. I think they're now above the playoff line as we speak. And then of course Toronto, they have really dropped down to the point where they're getting dangerously close in terms of dropping below the red line. Now, moving on, we got Montreal versus the Philadelphia Union. So again, this is kind of a matchup that you can say it's a desperation derby in between two teams that are definitely not having a good season. I mean, for Montreal, they're second to bottom with a 4-7-8 record, while the Union, I mean, it's been a rough stretch for them that they've been on. I mean, these last 2 months, it's been the toughest stretch I've seen a Jim Curtin side has gone through in quite some years. They have a 4-8-7 record. All-time meeting 10-10-9 in favor of Montreal. Last five head-to-head matchup was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams. The Union did get a 3-0 win against Montreal, and Montreal getting a 3-2 home win against the Union. Then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then the Union got a 2-1 win on the road against Montreal. So again, just like this game between Atlanta and Toronto, both of these teams desperately will want to get points, especially all 3 points to really get things going. Because again, one of the things, as I said about the Eastern Conference last week, is that it is a little bit tight. There are a lot of teams, and even though they're the ball in the standings, they're not that far from going up into the standing and going up above the playoff line. So certainly for a lot of these teams, their season is not over yet. They still are fighting for those playoff position. Although again, for some of these teams that are not supposed to be in that spot, and the Union, a team that we thought that they were potentially one of the favorites being one of the top dog in the Eastern Conference. Again, it's been just the complete opposite. It's been a disastrous season so far for Jim Kern's side to a point where it feels like maybe the writings are on the wall that they could start to go through a rebuild and just kind of tear down this the core that they have that has been just so good for them, and yet they just come up short every single time. Now we move on into the next matchup. So from one matchup that is between two very bad teams to a matchup between still sort of a bad team in New England. It's hard to believe that I think the Revs are, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're still dead last in the Eastern Conference. I might be wrong though, but it's kind of hard to believe that even with this good run that they have, where they won four in a row, they're still dead last in the East. That's how competitive the East are near the bottom. Well, they do face against a Columbus Crew side that have an 8-6-3 record, and this has got to be frustrating for Wilfred Nancy. Honestly, the fact that they're back on the road, they must hate the schedule maker of them going for a 5 game road trip. Finally, it's a return home, only to find out that they have to go on the road once again. But they do have an 8-6-3 record, and one thing I will say about Columbus this season, they've been very good this season on the road. They rarely lost this season on the road, though this is a very challenging game because, again, this New England team, it has definitely revitalized, and it's revitalized in a very, very unfamiliar kind of ways, with the way that it all started with some drama off the field, and ever since that, this team has really took off to a point where they're really back in the playoff conversation, even though I think they're still dead last in the East. Now, all-time meaning 40, 21, and 28 between both of these teams. Obviously, both of these teams are part of the original 10 teams that came into the league in 96, but the last five head-to-head matchup was a 2-1 road win that Columbus had over New England. Before, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, then a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, then a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, and then a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So there's been a lot of draws in this meeting, and it's been tight in these last couple of meetings, and I have a feeling this could be the same case again. Again, this New England team are playing just so much more confident. They're almost unrecognizable compared to what we saw just a month ago, when this team looked like they were dead and buried, and it looks like Caleb Porter is going to end up in the chopping block, and yet somehow in some way he's still in the job as the head coach of this New England Revolution side. Now, moving on, we got the Atlantic Cup between the Red Bulls versus DC United. So the Red Bulls with a 9-7-4 record, having a decent season. You can't say the same about DC. I mean, they have really fall off the map, at least in the last month or two, with a 4-7-9 record. All-time meeting, DC still leads this all-time meeting with a 44-14-41 record over the Red Bulls. But yeah, the last couple of Atlantic Cup, it has not been close. I mean, the last one, it was a 4-1 thrashing the Red Bulls took on DC United earlier this season. Before, it was a 5-3 road win that the Red Bulls had against DC. Then the Red Bulls won 1-0 against DC. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams before the Red Bulls thrashed DC again with a 4-1 win. Last time DC was able to get a result was back in 2021, when we were still going through the COVID pandemic, and the stadium wasn't actually open fully to the public. So yeah, it's been rough for DC in terms of this Atlantic Cup, and something tells me that could be the same case too, because again, the Red Bulls have definitely gone on a good run this season, and they probably could have been in a better position have they were a little bit clinical in terms of last week, when they had 3 games in 7 days and got 4 points out of it. And again, for DC, they have just completely followed the map. All the goodwill wills that Troy Lesane has gone at the beginning of the season, that has completely gone with the way how they've been playing the last couple of games. And if they play like that, this could be another rough game for them against the Red Bulls in this Atlantic Cup. Now, moving on, we got FC Dallas versus Cincinnati. So Dallas, another team that has definitely played much better, been a huge benefit in terms of the new interim head coach boost, with Peter Lucien being in charge. They have a 5-5-9 record. They're playing against a Cincinnati team that have a 12-3-4 record. Though again, Cincinnati has definitely suffered some hiccups along the way. They did come up with a loss, and not to mention, there is definitely question in terms of about their back line, where their back line is just completely wiped out because of injuries or international duty. But all-time meeting, there's only one other meeting between both of these teams, and Dallas actually won that one 3-1 against Cincinnati, so they're looking to try to do the same thing again. Especially, it seems like this Dallas attack has started to found some life compared to what we saw during the time under Nico Estevez, where this attack was just kind of woeful to see. So we'll see whether they can continue to do so, especially against another makeshift Cincinnati backline that are desperate to hope that the transfer window opens soon, because you know for sure that that's going to be their number one priority this summer. They need to boost that back line if they are going to still consider to be supported shield contender by the end of the season. Then we got the Houston Dynamo versus Charlotte FC. So this is a matchup that again a couple weeks ago, or even the beginning of the season, it might not sound like a sexy matchup, but under under there are but deep down, this is a very underrated kind of matchup because both of these teams are sneakily good and they're kind of considered to be a bit of a dark horse and kind of flying under the radar and not giving enough credit of how they've been doing this season. Now for the Dynamo, 7-6-6 is the record, while Charlotte 9-5-6 is their record. All-time meeting, Charlotte won both of those meeting between both of these teams, and that included a 2-1 home win against the Dynamo and then a 2-1 road win against the Houston Dynamo. So yeah, like I said, this is sneakily a very good matchup, especially with both of these teams continue to be on a very good form. I mean, the last game Charlotte got a resort, and the same goes for the Dynamo. Just thrashing their opponent in the last game against DC United, and they're looking to try to do so again at home in this matchup. Now, moving on, we got Sporting KC versus Austin FC. So all of a sudden, it feels like that kind of dark magic that Austin FC found near the middle of the season is starting to come back for them because these last couple of wins for Austin has been very dark magic, kind of just something that should not happen if you look at the expectancy number, and they're just kind of playing way over their heads a little bit in terms of XG. But that they're gonna just point out that's why you pay attention to the points, and again they're able to still get resort despite not playing relatively well really for this whole season, and they have a chance to do so again because they play against one of the worst team in the West and really one of the worst team in the league in Sporting KC that again continue to be on a free fall right now. 3-5-12 is their record. All-time meeting 5-1-2 in favor of Austin. So Austin has really enjoyed playing against Sporting KC lately, and that included a 3-2 home win against Sporting KC before Austin winning 2-1 against Sporting KC. Sporting KC did thump Austin 4-1, but then Austin won 4-3 against Sporting KC, and then Austin winning 2-0 on the road against Sporting KC. So again, judging by the last five head-to-head matchup and the recent form, you would assume maybe Austin should win this game. Though again, for Sporting KC, if there is one opponent that they might want to get a chance to win and trying to kick off season, Austin might be that team. I mean, I know they haven't done well in terms of the recent history, but they just desperately need something going because again, I think between them and the Quakes, the season is pretty much done unless if they maybe have a bit of a spark, like what we see the refs currently is having, because again it's really getting away from them, and it's turning to be one of the worst seasons that Sporting KC has ever had in their club history. Now, moving on, we got Nashville versus Inter Miami. So, for a couple of years ago, this always has been a very hot, heated kind of matchup. Though, again, I don't think it's going to have that same magnitude because there are some missing players from both of these teams, especially from Inter Miami, because, the GOAT is still playing for Argentina right now, and even some of his friends, like Luis Suarez, is still playing for Uruguay in Copa America. But that being said, in terms of this matchup, Nashville has a 6-8-5 record. Again, they're another team that's been kind of benefiting from the new interim head coach boost. They're definitely playing much better ever since they fired Gary Smith. Whereas for Inter Miami, 12-5-3, they continue to lead the Supporter Shield standings and lead the East. All-time meeting 4-5-4 between both of these teams, and the last five head-to-head meeting, and this is just league meeting because this technically is the third time that both of these teams, of course, play against each other. And Nashville will definitely want to get some revenge over Miami because it hasn't been looking so well for them in terms of how they play in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But it was a 3-1 win that Miami had against Nashville before it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Then Nashville won 2-1 against Miami. Then Nashville absolutely thrashed Miami 5-1 on the road before Miami winning 2-1 against Nashville SC. But one thing I will say about Inter Miami, and to give them credit, they have actually done pretty well when all things considered without Messi and his friends. I mean, for a long time, people were saying that this is the depth stretch for Inter Miami because they're missing so many of their key players, but they're doing just fine. And again, that's all credit has to do with them, and they definitely have kind of proved me wrong a little bit. The fact that they would just absolutely collapse and started to go for a free fall, but they're definitely holding it together. We'll see whether or not if they can do so against a Nashville team that again they feel like they're rejuvenated, and at least in these last couple games, and getting themselves in the playoff picture, and actually now above the playoff line as we speak. That being said, let me now actually just manually change the board because why not? Why not just manually change the board? There's no point basically stopping this video. Let's just actually now looking at these next couple of games. And these are for the West Coast game. And this actually makes it interesting in terms of doing the review because I could just basically name the review part one in terms of looking at the 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Eastern game. And then part two, we'll just basically look at all the West Coast game that starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. And again, it's pretty much a bit of a record amount of West Coast game. We got a lot of West Coast games this week. But we start off with the first one, which is LAFC versus the Colorado Rapids. Again, this is another matchup that you would not expect to be a marquee matchup, but these are two teams that have been red hot lately. LAFC, of course, we know they're the hottest team in the league with an 11-4-4 record, whereas the Rapids definitely been playing very well, especially at home in the last couple of games, winning 9-4-7 record. All-time meetings 6-1-4 in favor of LAFC, but the last five head-to-head matchup, it was Colorado winning 3-2 against LAFC before it was a 4-0 LAFC win against Colorado. Then it was a pair of 0-0 draw before Colorado winning 2-0 against LAFC. Now, it's important to note, I don't think the Rapids have ever beaten LAFC at BMO Stadium. But to be fair, not a lot of team is able to get a result at BMO Stadium. It is very rare that LAFC drop points at home, so that could be a difference in this game. But again, this is probably the best Rapids team that LAFC would play when they're playing at home. So this is not going to be an easy task. And again, won't be surprised. This could be a preview in terms of what we see in the playoffs. These two teams are really good, and do not be surprised if Colorado might shock the world and maybe send a message if they can get a big win in this one against one of the hottest team in the league right now. That is LAFC. That is just charging up into the standings and maybe even get into the supporter shield race once again. Now, moving on, we got the Portland Timbers versus Minnesota. So yeah, the Loons. Unfortunately, they're kind of having your typical kind of bad run where when they're missing a lot of players due to injuries and international duty, and knowing the fact that I knew this was kind of the death run for this team when they're missing a lot of players, and also the fact that when it's pretty clear that this team doesn't really have a lot of depth. Yeah, that's kind of the reason why they've been in a really rough patch. Now, the good news is they play against the Portland Timbers, which is one of the teams that they always love to play against because they pretty much has a really good record over the Timbers. 10-2-4 is their all-time record. The Timbers with 7-6-7 record, while Minnesota has an 8-5-6 record. And the last five head-to-head matchup is a 2-1 home win against the Timbers earlier this season, before Minnesota winning 4-1 against the Timbers last season. Then Minnesota won 1-0 on the road against the Timbers before the Timbers did win 1-0 at home against Minnesota. And then it was a thrilling 4-4 draw that we saw a couple of years ago. So again, there's one team that Minnesota really needs to pick up a win, even if it's on the road. It's against the Portland Timbers. They just, for whatever reason, they always match up well against the Timbers. But we'll see whether or not if that is the case, because the Timbers have definitely played much better in these last couple of games, and I just kind of have a fear that it won't be long before this team could not only drop down the standings. I mean, they're already down to fifth right now in the standings, but if they don't pick things up, they could drop themselves outside the playoffs. And I know it's been an incredible run that Minnesota has in the beginning of the season, but it feels like reality is starting to set in. It's kind of very similar to what we see with TFC, where for Toronto, they were expected to be a very bad team this season. They had an incredible run in the beginning of the season under John Herman, but it feels like now reality is starting to set in, and the cracks not only are starting to show, but it's definitely starting to crumble, and we're starting to see the same thing with Minnesota. If they don't make the reinforcement that they needed, this could go south very quickly for Minnesota. Now, moving on is the game that, of course, I'll be going because it's the Cali Clasico, and I know this might be one of the more lopsided Cali Clasico, and one that I'm pretty sure a lot of Quakes fans are really kind of worrying that this could get ugly. The good news for the Quakes coming into this one is the fact that they will have a new head coach coming into this game. Well, a new interim head coach, that is. Ian Russell, of course, will be taking in charge. So you hope that maybe that new interim head coach boost can immediately be in effect, especially, this is the Cali Clasico after all. Though, recently, just like the Atlantic No, the Cali Classico hasn't been close whatsoever. It's been dominated by the Galaxy. And by the way, because this is a Cali Classico at Stanford Stadium, I think last year I wear the San Jose Clash kind of a jersey, and I'm gonna do it again in this preview, and I'll definitely be wearing this as well when I go to Stanford Stadium to watch this game. But in terms of the record, yeah, it's an ugly 3-2-14 record for the Quakes, whereas the Galaxy 10-7 and 3. All-time meeting 45, 18, and 33 in favor of the Galaxy, and the last five head-to-head matchup, it was the Galaxy winning 4-3 against the Quakes. It was an incredible game that we saw before the Quakes did lose 3-1 against the Galaxy. Then the Quakes lost 3-2 against the Galaxy before it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, and then the Galaxy winning 2-1 against the San Jose Earthquakes. So yeah, again, all signs point to the fact that the Galaxy is going to absolutely destroy the Quakes in this one. But again, it is a Classico, and again, with the new interim head coach boost, I think that will really help the Quakes. I mean, we've seen it before, that it is really a thing in this league, and while maybe it might not take effect in the first game, and I certainly hope that is the case because they would really need it if they don't want to get themselves absolutely destroyed in this game. If they can get a big win like that, maybe, just maybe, it will kickstart their season. And I say that with not a lot of hope because I've talked about for Sporting KC, look like they're done this season, and it feels like the Quakes are joining that list with them sitting at the bottom, not only in the Western Conference, but literally right now in the bottom of the entire league. Now, moving on, we got the Seattle Sounders versus Chicago. So, this is between two teams that has definitely played much better lately. I mean, Seattle, yes, they're still 10th in the West, but they're definitely making their inroad with a 6-7-7 record. And for Chicago, yes, I know they did suffer a bit of a setback in the game against Orlando where they lost 4-2, but I thought they played well in that game, and they have a 4-6-9 record and are trying to slowly climb themselves up in a very tightly congested bottom of the standings in the East. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 10-4-4 in favor of Seattle. So yeah, Chicago has not matched up with Seattle relatively well. But that doesn't mean that they haven't beaten the Seattle Sounders. In fact, the last two times Chicago has been able to beat Seattle, they won 1-0 against the Sounders at home before winning 2-1 at home against the Sounders. Then Seattle did win 2-1 against Chicago before Chicago did lose 4-2 to Seattle, and it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who, of course, get the win. Again, both of these teams seems like they have now some new belief that they could get themselves back into the playoff picture, and a win will definitely help booster that morale as well. Now, moving on, we got the Vancouver Whitecaps versus St. Louis City. So, yeah, the Whitecaps, it's been a bit of an inconsistent season for them with a 7-4-7 record and kind of like right down almost near the middle in the Western Conference this year. Well, for St. Louis, I mean, they're pretty much begging the fact they would love to have an inconsistent season because it's been a nightmare season for the St. Louis side. 3-10-6 is their record. They're kind of like almost like the Chicago Fire back in 2014, where they're just drawing way too many games, not winning enough games, and also losing game in hand. And I won't be surprised their record could be very similar to the Chicago Fire back in 2014, when the Fire and Nashville are two teams that holds the record for the most time we have ever seen in a single season with 18 draws. But in terms of all-time record, one wins apiece for both of these teams. It was a 3-0 home win that Vancouver had against St. Louis before St. Louis winning 3-1 against the Vancouver Whitecaps. So yeah, we'll see how this, of course, would turn out. I mean, honestly, for the Whitecaps, as inconsistent that they have been, you gotta say that they gotta win this one. I mean, St. Louis has not had a good season whatsoever, and we'll see whether they can do so, and we'll see whether or not if St. Louis can stay out of drawing games. I mean, in terms of the all-time meeting, there hasn't been a draw in this all-time meeting, so something tells me they probably would not draw in this game, though they definitely also don't want to take a loss as well. Again, it's been a very miserable season for St. Louis, and again, that second season syndrome is definitely a real thing, and I think St. Louis is definitely suffered that and then some with the way that this season has gone. But there we have it. That is pretty much it in terms of my preview of all 13 of these games to finish off match week number 22. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.